Black velvet, bow bow. Black velvet in a shimmy bow. A new religion. That's black velvet and stuff. Yes, you will see everything is draped in my finest black velvets, and I am wearing my snazziest black velvet pants. And by chance, I'm also sporting velvet shoes that match Two-Hand Luke's little flute-duez here really nicely. Look at that. Look how nicely he dressed for you today. Oh, yes, indeed. So it's a fancy occasion, obviously. I'll have you just take in my shirt here because it's very special to me. Very, very special indeed. Been waiting for this one for quite some time. So it feels like a little bit of high stakes when I got this like hot hotsy-totsy movie light. Adds to the ambiance, but it makes it even more intense. So my outfit is a very meticulously planned shout out to the person this poem is about. And if you know, then you know. If you know, then you know. I kind of left his name out of it, not that you can't like Google who he is, because he's pretty darn famous in my book and in a lot of people's books. But, he's a man with many aliases as well. And he is an enigma and a breaker of stigma and very mysterious. And, one with quite a history. A mystery with much history. So, I kept it kind of that way, sort of mysterious. Not that you can't play along and figure out exactly what the ditty is about, what the poem is a song, is a story is a song, is a story, is a dream, is a poem. This is very, very important. My palms are sweating. Whoo! Mom's spaghetti and all that. But hey, got good company here. And this is, everything in this, everything I am right now and am embodying and have brought to you is an homage. So, like a living collage in high regard. Could not praise this person enough, but I have to just touch on the fluffy stuff around the edges and jump into the poetry because I sat here writing it all day and felt so much just inner stirrings of what I've been trying to articulate in this poem for months and thinking about it and thinking about the experience of meeting this truly one in a billion type friend, billion with a B. And it just flowed through me today and ended up being 23 pages long. Holy schlongs and schlotchkis and tchotchkes. That's a long one. But I'm going to deliver it promptly. This even down to the 2 buttons on the jacket. This is exactly how my dear friend was pretty much dressed when the day I met him in Hollyweird. And I bought this shirt from this incredible establishment. We'll dive into the meat and taters here, folks. We'll just dive into the meat and taters. Because the longer I prattle, the later it gets. When I met this friend, he was wearing a pink hat, a bright, vibrant pink hat that said this, reppin' the brand of the Velveteria. And, place that somehow closed down, but should have caused mass hysteria, because it's that flipping good. So, who can account? No accounting for lack of taste in the world. It's a disgrace. But I brought out my neon pink hat that gives a little nod to Fort Collins. But I decided, because there's a lot of this friend's words woven into my poem, and I tried to make it distinct and clear, but I'm just going to put on the hat when I'm supposed to be him, so that you really follow along. And that'll be great. So that's the props. We got the company and audience right here, my guy. And that's a shout out as well, because this friend also has a draw toward the mannequin kin, the kin we call mannequin. So, I'm nervous. I just want this person to feel sung and celebrated. So I'll give it a shot. Today being day 157, 7 being my favorite number, 5 being a number that sort of unites everything, and 1 being really cool because it's 1. And it's not just the loneliest number. It's your pointer finger. It's all kinds of things. Oh, and I wore these rings, speaking of things, just because I thought he would appreciate the bling. This one's sort of southwesty. And a kitty, of course, because you. And then this one says, BAM! Thought he'd appreciate that. Appreciate. Yes, you know, appreciate. And the honk. Because honk if you're a dreamer. Girl can dream. Honk if you like the honk. Righto. And I'm in my acrylic chair, which makes me feel, dare I say, a little cool, a little groovy, and just draped in black velvet like a movie. So let's jump on in. Hi. Call this poem today, When All the Rest Fails, I'll Still Believe in the Velvet Trail. Even before I approached the Velveteria, I knew that it would stimulate areas of my parietal lobe that had been feeling rather low. I could sense the glow of life-altering weirdness and the flow of a delirious Hollywood gone by, drenched in oddities before it took itself so damn seriously. Rather imperiously, the moneybags of LA had clearly been dragging Chinatown through the simultaneous neglect and gentrification that was clearly making it drown. In a 3-block radius, we heard troubling sounds of brakes screeching and the desperate seeking some sort of break already beyond their breaking point, and a sort of low, disjointed murmur hum. Whoa, that was fun. A sort of low, disjointed murmur hum. When I lived there, I became well versed at the difference between a bum, a derelict, a madman, and just a human soul that nobody gave a damn about or reached out to. And you can call it judgmental, but you have to know the difference when someone's coming towards you with their arms outstretched, and be ready to place bets on what their intentions are. A car covered in actual skulls passed by as we approached this place I'd been dreaming of, and I turned to tell my love, "Gosh, I know it's crazy, but I miss this place." His face said it all. He could see the downfall of what it once was, but he could also see the beauty, like that old Taoist ideal about the lotus buds coming from shit. If any place exemplifies that thought, Hollywood is it. It's a simultaneous high combined with an ache in the pit of your gut. It's a playground and a rut equally. A place where you frequently don't know whether to laugh or cry, and so you do both while you fly high or scrape by. And there's always some guy there to take pictures. It hits your senses while caressing them. It's a crackerjack ring and a precious gem all at once. It's the apocalypse eclipsed by beautiful, dazzling storefronts that pull you in. And I was back, and I knew something spectacular was about to begin. We passed by a variety of sins as the pervasive scent of human piss made me recollect a list of terrible experiences. But the interferences are always quickly preceded by something amazing. Just when you think you're totally depleted, you're greeted by a once-in-a-lifetime thrill, making the bad pills go down a little easier. We walked up to the infamous Velveteria and saw 2 mannequins that couldn't have been sleazier. Oh yes, this is the place. One of the mannequins had a male A male, one of the mannequins, a male, had a face that may have been Burt Reynolds, or maybe just some other dude from the past with a big-ass mustache. He had no arms and a vintage 70s t-shirt with a far-out surfer that said, Aloha. I was in awe of every detail. I was about to set sail in my kind of paradise. A slice of gritty creativity that's all but vanished to time. The same mannequin was looking fine with a thick brown tie covered in circus ringleaders and show horses. Of course, he was wearing a Speedo with a neon pink naked lady doing some sort of fancy show. He had no arms, but what he lacked in limbs he made up for in charms. The lady mannequin may or may not have had a head. I was drawn instead by her tattered stockings that indicated she'd been walking the block a while, if you catch my drift. They were ripped in a way that only a true purveyor of the old L.A. would understand. One of her hands was missing, and old Hollywood gossip rags dangled from the hollow of her arm. It would have been very disarming to any oatmeal vanilla types. Good thing I'm nothing like that. She sat in front of a big eyes velvet of a dog, and below her was a ceramic bunny and a strange red rocking horse. I couldn't possibly log all the details, of course, but I felt a force from that place I couldn't wait to explore deeper. These freaky mannequins were the gatekeepers, and I knew I was exactly where I needed to be. Only one problem. The sign on the window said, cash only. Shit. But I couldn't throw a fit. You just gotta take the challenges and roll with it in the city of dreams and spit. So, we turned back in search of an ATM. Sounds easy, but such a task sends you through a maze of crazed drug addicts and folks who would do just about anything for a little bit of what you've got. We found a spot, and naturally there was a shirtless man counting out a giant plastic bag of coins to buy some booze. I thought to myself, don't lose focus. Use your locus of control. Gotta get rolling back to the Velveteria. But even when you rationalize that these are all just people, they can sure as shit still scare ya. There was a mini confrontation between the store clerk and the man with the coins because he didn't quite have enough. The scene could have gotten real tough, but the guy just let him have the bottle. He waddled past us in a zombie-like daze, and we just played it cool. Okay, we had the cash now to get back to drooling over the velvets. We were greeted by the owner, who withheld not 1 ounce of his glorious juju from us. He immediately busted out a square, unassuming little bolt of fabric. In the most magic, scratchy character voice, he told us, "Now, the tragic thing is, most people would never let you touch something like this." I leaned in, not wanting to miss a syllable of his wisdom. He continued, "Lucky for you, I'm a lot more fun than most people. See, this is one of the oldest known velvet paintings from China. It's over 100 years old. All the fuddy-duddy art types wouldn't let you near something like this." He paused dramatically for effect. "But I don't give a shit, see? I have very little faith or hope in future generations, so go ahead and give it a rub." I knew instantly this was a hub of all things I used to believe in about this weird city. It's a real pity most of that mojo had just dried up. But here was a keeper of such marvels who wasn't about to hide anything from us. He started by telling us an insane story about someone who had just busted into the place and robbed him blind. I was reminded instantly of how unkind the city could be. Some asshole had tunneled through the roof. We were shown the proof. A giant hole just above a huge Elvis shrine, complete with a large wooden tiki head of Elvis that you would have to behold to believe. The guide then proceeded to take all the Velveteria's money, then tunnel through the wall into the neighboring building. It would almost be funny if it was in a movie, but it wasn't. It was happening to someone amazing who didn't remotely deserve to be screwed like that. As you can imagine, the cops did a big fat nothing about it. They even caught the guy, kept him in jail a week or so, then let him go to be the culprit of some other horrendous theft. My new instant friend was just happy he left the art alone. This place was also his home, and I could practically picture him in there alone, caring for these one-of-a-kind masterpieces like friends and loved ones. My joy and intrigue could have been measured by the ton. Of the thousands of velvet paintings I saw, if you asked me to pick a favorite, there's no way I could choose just one. Liberace in a fur coat was at the top, no doubt, and Bernie and Hillary as unicorns having it out in a debate. The Rod Serling was beyond great. An alien with a huge cock running through the woods made me stop and contemplate. Cher with her big 80s hair radiating sass. Anderson Cooper in a thong is a masterclass in true art. Dearly departed like Buddy Holly in Tempest Storm. Tributes to Tammy Faye and Caitlyn Jenner way outside the norm. Poodles. My autocorrect blurred out. I think it's pimps. Poodles and pimps. What? Oh, porn stars. It blurred out porn. Come on, phone. We can say porn. It's 2021. Tammy Faye and Caitlyn Jenner way outside the norm. Poodles and porn stars and sad clowns. Oh my. Busty blacklight goddesses dump as a gold-hoarding Pegasus, otherwise known as Trump. Dump as a gold-hoarding Pegasus. Marilyn, James Dean, and Elvis on the backs of Pegasi. That's plural of Pegasus. On the backs of Pegasi, finally getting to fly. The Wolfman, Barbra Streisand, Obama, and of course, Batboy. Mel Gibson in his crazy phase, Timothy Leary, a cheery band of taxidermied toads, plenty of Mr. T and Pee Wee Herman toys. I was overjoyed. There was a pervasive chaos in the place which some squares may have been annoyed by, but I could tell my new forever friend who owned the place was far from a gives two nickels what any Tom, Dick, or Harry thinks kind of guy. A velvet painting of Snoop Dogg caught my eye, and the interesting bit was that it was buried beneath a stack of other paintings several feet high. There were Cheetos bags stuck between paintings from late nights gone by. It was an irreverent kind of reverence that made the presence of this place shine. This new hero of mine went on rants about government corruption, the seduction of Hollywood, and all the weasels posing as good guys who told him they would make a documentary about the place, only to use him and do an about-face like so many waste-of-space fuckheads I had encountered there. And I could feel some tinge of despair in his voice. I almost sensed that he was being faced with a difficult choice, though I didn't know the details yet. He showed me his hidden collection of furry and fuzzy velvety pimp hats, his band leader hat covered in bizarre baubles, and a whole baffling collection of other treasures I could never ever forget. He let us in on all the best stories. One of the most glorious was about one of his first paintings that got him hooked on the collection many years back. He actually found it next to a dumpster in a back alley, and it was spectacular. A recreation of The Last Supper, but every character was black, with a giant, beautiful afro. You just can't know what it was like unless you were lucky enough to be there and smell the air filled with velvet and get that rare pulse spike. Rubber Hillary Clinton masks, bedazzled flasks, a clamshell band, Spock doing the live long and prosper hand. Any true fan of the place knows there's just nowhere else like it. You can laugh, but just being there in that velvet lair made me feel a bit more psychic. I gave my new pal, the king of the true hep cats, an article that had been written about me, and he was genuinely grateful and excited to read it. He talked to me about all the money schemes and broken dreams of the art world, and how truly lucky he was that he hadn't been defeated by the big heavy pockets at the top who preach inclusivity and diversity, but actually deplete both and cut corners where integrity matters the most. The big CEOs and curators boast about their generosity and philanthropy, while like most things in LA, greed is at the helm. Being in that little museum was a whole other realm of realness. I felt a sense of overwhelm about how fragile the whole area seemed and how volatile the very foundation of my new true friend's hard work and life's dream felt. I had there's several mishaps in here. I'm finding them and reading over them and self-correcting, but hoo-wee, my brain. I wrote proposed. There was no proposing. We posed together for pictures, and I could just feel that although he wouldn't say it, he needed help. I could only hope that he felt how deep my admiration for him was. He let me run my hands over the one-of-a-kind fuzz of velvet on some of his favorite pieces. The buzz I got from that place, oh, sweet black light neon electric velvet Jesus. As we were about to leave, I thought, what the hell leads us away from extraordinary places like this and towards suburbs and strip malls? Why do so many answer the call of conformity while the creative enormity of places like the Velveteria are pushed to the periphery? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of a tight, restrictive three-piece suit, and a cookie-cutter, window-shuttered bread with rancid butter, boring suburban box to boot. My buddy, whose alias is Eddie Creechman, one of them, reached into his energetic arsenal and showed me all the amazing loot he'd collected over decades. He may not realize it, but he changed my life that day. Time went on, as it tends to, and I had to bend uncomfortably back to the grind of waitressing. But one day in late February, a friend of mine told me he was making a trip to LA. The very first thing I had to say was, you have to go to the Velveteria. Have to. No question. Put it at the top of your list. Nothing else there compares. I went to look up the address to give him the details, and I was so unprepared for what I saw. The listing said, permanently closed, and my jaw dropped, as did my soul. I was bowled over by these two simple, terrible words. This was absurd. This simply couldn't be. I found articles confirming the strange feeling I had when I was there that my friend was indeed in need. The museum had been hanging on by a thread for a while, and even with all the vile takeover of the rich, this protector of true art with the rarest of hearts didn't let on that he was in a terrible sitch, and charged less than the cost of an LA sandwich for admission. He was in a terrible financial bind, but refused to draw attention to his imposition, choosing instead to share his mind and strange finds and traditions. His mission was to make it about the art and put the fucking cart and the horse behind the velvet rather than forcing every visitor who beheld it, his strange palace, to focus on the fallacy of art as pristine, gleaming, untouchable commodity, only to be seen for top dollar. He gave the middle finger to all the elite competing art experts and scholars. He hollered curse words and swerved in his stories like Hunter Thompson in his Cadillac. He'd likely never retracted a single thought, because he refuses to be a fucking robot out to please every snob. He didn't force fundraisers or hobnob. He joked that most artists are lonely slobs who pretend they're touched or gifted. He saw the upper echelons song and dance that the art world was trying to enchant everyone with, and he was trying to shift it. Obviously, after we left LA, the museum took a swift hit and things went downhill real quick. I realized he had let me in on the fate of the place hanging in the balance in a semi-cryptic way. Through developing a deeper friendship with him, I've come to learn he doesn't always convey messages in the most direct way. Sometimes it's like deciphering a Beckett play, but I think he likes it that way. He told me he wasn't about to obey the thugs who were destroying Chinatown. He refused to brown-nose the uppity bullies using hard-working people to leverage the rigged pulleys of systematic oppression from their big high towers, flexing their powers and calling it success. He'd rather have less and have his soul than fold to their guaranteed to lose carnival games of profits and gains, no matter the pain caused. He rarely paused when he spoke, but I saw him almost get choked up a little while discussing his hopes for the Velveteria's future, as if he knew it was already a gash too deep to suture. Fast forward a few months after I got the gut punch that this one-of-a-kind place had been pushed on its face, no doubt by disgraceful bullshit slumlords. I swore to myself I wasn't going to let this unforgettable human and his contribution to the world simply be a memory within me. So I did what people rarely do these days. I picked up the phone, not even knowing if my unlikely friend would pick up, or what I'd say, and I reached out anyway. Something serendipitous must have been at play, because when that memorable raspy textured voice said, "Hello?" I felt that glow of being there with someone twice as anomalous as I am, who didn't put on any airs or speak in common niceties, but was actually free in his flowing eccentricities, who lives as he pleases without head-bowing apologies. I jumped right in, skipping all the hollow pleasantries. He remembered me immediately, and we jumped into a conversation that was exceedingly connected, even more so than I remembered. Even more so than I expected. I could tell that this man, who surfed to hell and back, was in pain, but he managed to deflect it pretty convincingly. The pandemic had hit like shit on a sonic-powered fan. The streets of LA, he said, were more than even strong souls could stand. He described only a glimpse to me, a sea of zombies, every man for himself, wealth dividing everyone like a fault line. He said he would be fine, but I struggled to believe it. He told me about the animalistic push and pull just trying to get some groceries, and I could hardly conceive of such a scene. I'd be out of my wits. All the stars with their glitz and glam ran off into their massive bunkers in the hills with their champagne and pills and 6 personal chefs and all the frills, filming themselves trying to be relatable about how stressful it all was. Gave me chills in a bad way. We both had plenty to say about the condition of the human spirit and kindness quickly slipping away in the face of something that could erase us all. People more upset about their closed bars and malls than they were appalled by the general lack of decency, completely consuming all of humanity at a rapid pace beyond insanity. We did mental trapeze about the calamity that was once human possibility. Of all the people who lined up for pictures in his amazing space, no one was around to help him face the darkness. Because phony squawk is cheap, and that's why real friendships are hard to keep. It sure sounded like the downward slope there was pretty damn steep. Most people have no clue that for many, basic survival is a barely viable feat. We talked for hours before he really filled me in on his predicament, telling me that of all the things he was facing, the most terrible monster to beat was cancer. He isn't the sort of person who speaks his truth looking for quick solutions or answers, but I was glad he trusted me, knowing somehow that we both see the whole world as dancers with cement attached to their feet. I cried, and in a strange twist, our conversation turned to him comforting me. A couple of oddballs who refuse to fall victim to the powers that be and will kick the teeth of defeat before we let it creep close to our inner fortresses. 2 strange souls who will not fold to the surging storms of societal norms and individuality weakening forces. But like free-roaming horses in the wild suddenly put in a cage, we can't help but fight. But like free-roaming horses in the wild suddenly put in a cage, we can't keep the fight up, as it were, without a fair amount of rage. The pages turned on more and more strange days that seemed to belong in a science fiction teleplay. We keep in touch through text, and I like that he doesn't speak in a particularly direct way, but rather in riddles that spiral and jiggle and sway. In the early months of the madness, he seemed to keep the sadness at bay with messages like, "On the beach watching dolphins frolic, dogs splash in the waves, maidens dancing in the sands. Come join in the agua es caliente, surf burrito, how's life?" But other times I could so distinctly feel the sorrow and the strife, sitting a little too close to the cosmic edge of a knife disguised as a city, hiding all its gritty parts with movie stars. I know how hard it is to be a real, actual person there. While the casting couch outlives the hashtags and the models flip their hair. All this ugliness he describes with perfect, dramatic flair. I watch countless creatures doing selfies at the beach, music blasting, pretty girls all pretending to have fun. It's pitiful. It is loosening up in Cali when the governor is getting the boot, so he's giving away the store to keep the power. Super violent here. Don't venture out at night. Too many out there with nothing to lose. Keep your fists up, Teal Eye, in the mile-high sky. He calls me Teal Eye. It's from an A.B. Guthrie book I gotta find time to read. We have our own little news feed, and we've wordlessly agreed to keep the trite shit out of it. He paints on velvet in my mind, taking time to describe the mountain of strangeness he's surrounded by. Sometimes a small film reel splice, sometimes a bigger pie slice. He tells me, "Looky here, I made a paradise. Is this world gonna welcome it back? Or live in corporate, sanctified, lockstep Hades, foraging away at these government programs to stay alive?" I specify that I can't pretend to understand what it's like. I've never really had to fight. But he gets me speaking a new language, one once vanquished by the pressures to concede to tired-ass normalcy. I dig for words to observe a battle I have never had to be rattled by just to be alive. I reply, "I can snap to that very, very real jive, and I know you got more mental floss than fucking Ken Kesey and Hunter S. combined." This is a simple compliment of millions I could pay him that he is moved by. He says, "That's the kindest words laid on my soul, like a feather on my mind. Better than the weight of the world on my shoulders." And that wasn't even the half of how much I admire him, lifting fucking heavy boulders with no credit in a world barely lifting a finger to drain the money pit. He articulates it further. "Frustrating to have something better than all that has come before and see fawning admiration for sheer stupidity from celebrities to politicians. If I could figure out the endless hoop jumping of this government money for small business, I could reopen. Looking around, I wonder if the vibe for fun is gone, or are they ready to break out of this and laugh again? That's all we got, the laughter. If you got something cool, share it. Make the world better. I learned that's not how most people are. Who needs them? They're waiting to scoop up all my stuff, sell it to buy toiletries for their unctuous third eyes. It would be nice to have a co-conspirator, but Jack Herer dubbed me the Lone Tripper." Yes, he was referring to the Jack Herer. "No one can keep up anyway. Let's see what the devil has in store for me now." He's funny in a way almost no one is these days. I show him pictures of the nearly 6 feet of snow we got in the spring, and he says, "Holy shit, I'd jump in front of a snowplow." He knows how to be dark, but keep it light. He fights for basic human rights with very little light being held out for him. He may not know it. And I'm as aware as he is, but if there is a council, he may not know it. He may not know it. And I'm as aware as he is that if there is a council of gods, they could still blow it. Maybe they already have. But I still think prayer is a salve to the wounds we endure. And I'm not sure if anyone's listening anymore, but I pray for him every night. He gets from place to place like sound waves taking flight. He doesn't currently have a home to call his own, but he doesn't let that make him a fucking drone. He tells me about adventures that are so out of sight. Camped out in the desert under the moon. No media. Vegas is dead. But a homeless guy offered me a shopping cart for sale. Blending in with the denizens. Any riots going on? Neither of us belong to the humans or the aliens. We're sailing a different kind of ship. We don't listen when people say, "Shape up, get a grip." We just give those squares the slip. He speaks like no one else. "Dig this. I was in this crevice." Now that's how you start a sentence. "Dig this. I was in this crevice where the San Andreas fault lies beneath been going there for decades. It was emitting some warmth along with the bubbling or not so bubbling mud pit. So I took a primitive mud bath. I thought this was way más differencio than previous visits. Something's up below, Cabrone. You could get swallowed up before St. Joseph's Day at Capistrano. So I ventured down to Varner Road, dodging grave-digging meth heads, the bowels of earth blithely exposed, heating up there. Stay cool. They don't teach you how to jive like that in any school. He unravels life like a spool of magic golden thread that everyone else says is just string. They're just part of the sting to destroy the part of the human spirit that refuses to just small talk and chooses instead to sing and dance instead of shuffle along or walk the walk they're told to adhere to. Fear is the through line of their mind control, and we don't let it hold us hostage. We still beam our dreams at the highest wattage, though I know he contends with some much more heart-rending plot twists. Late one night, recently, he texts me. Before it's time to hunker down in craven darkness, in Jellyfish Nation, I gotta fly higher to see which wave to ride my skag over the Hodad. Back in Lost Angeles. Emphasis on lost. Never seen it so scary. Reminds me of, well, nothing I ever seen in any place. Yeah, that's the line. That's every sullen step. Who could possibly be adept for such terror and vitality theft? But I also remember a time not too long off, he told me, "Now what you gonna do about your story, mankind?" I got no reason to quit. And I pray he means it. I know his fortitude has been hard hit. I send him my poetry because it's the only part of me with no deficit. He responds to a section of one in particular. Frowns are a threat to the algorithm, the schisms of Homo sapien pleasantries, varying degrees of passable humanity, digestible nibbles of depth. No heft of soul stuff, please. No need for grandeur, a circus of fleas. He gifts a story to me. All his stories are gifts, indeed. The coolest thing I ever saw was a genuine flea circus at Del Mar Fair and watching the crowd suspend disbelief because the ringmaster was so entertaining. He sold it. My daughter and her friends never stopped talking about how talented those fleas are. Circus fleas are the rarest of breeds, but no respect on account of dogs who home reckless fleas and their owners who hate circuses. What is a tightrope flea to do? Jump to Velveteria where the bearded ladies miss your itch. Enough of me for now. Always great winking at ya, Teal-Eye. He never says goodbye or some such dry parting words. It's always an end button with great flair because he knows I'm a glutton for the odd and absurd. I love that he swerved unpredictably from the unexpected ordinary. But sometimes in his far off the common beaten up path rhymes and labyrinthian lines, I find myself worrying about him in my fretful mind, which is a well with no bottom. Sometimes people who are used to tough survival drop little hints that they're not exactly fine, but it can be hard to spot them. Through the armor they've been forced to build. Such a truly extraordinary person, and I just wish he could be fulfilled. He doesn't need a briefcase of $100 bills or some fucking waste of place in the Hollywood Hills. He spills some bits of his frustration. Both of us knowing the sanity train left the fucking station, hauling ass to some greener pasture. We try to keep up, and time moves faster. He says so humbly, "Teal, I just need 4 walls and 2 eyes. Just want everything in one place instead of scattered from hell to breakfast." I know what's reflected in his uniquely selected words. I know he's had a swerving amount of people say, I know he's had an absurd amount of people say they will help him, only to leave him swimming solo when they damn sure know there's hungry sharks in there. All these fair weather friends who show up for the parties until the bean dip makes them farty or some such lame excuse, and the second things get hard, they wiggle their caboose right out the door. His masterpieces have been stored in various places, a disappointing sea of faces who claimed they were going to make documentaries for him and get him a win. This sad story is so familiar to me, it makes my head spin. Netflix filmmakers who wanted to be let in for free because they were going to create the break the Velveteria needed. Scary how quickly kindness is depleted when you see a monstrous ego and refuse to feed it on command. On the other hand, how else do us creative types stand a chance without taking chances? I suppose that old organ grinder monkey dances when he's told to. Why does it always seem those with the most beautiful dreams and the most to offer always seem to be forced to prove and prove it and prove it again? With those Hollywood types, made up in the bright lights, it's even harder to know who your real friends are. The true ones are like a few granules of sand you try to hold, and the phonies who fold on a dime are like the whole rest of the beach. A real nasty slough. My brilliant friend put it well when he said, I see so many boring, cliched documentaries and think of what could be. Velveteria has so many cool stories that venture down the velvet trail to a beautiful past lost to the Taylor Swift generation, or should I say, the Kardashian crew. Ew, so brutal, so true. Harkening back to the fleas, he tells me, acting is believing, but I ain't believing in any of this flea shit. He doesn't just sit while it all burns. He takes unexplored turns. He learns by really living, even when it's tumultuous and unforgiving. Early in the scary co-video game, he let me in on a winding path in his brain. He was on the beach, so hot, praying for rain. I camped on this beach during the summer of OJ, 48/7/95. The city was chasing its tail with that tail white powder, bloody blondes in the warm California sun. Cowa fucking bonga. A net never got cut with those atomic bongos. Full moon, torrid pines. Saint Barbara's wine. Offline, can't hear pandemic's whine. The dogs bark, but the caravan moves on, down the velvet trail. Pandemic is my one woe man show. As in woe. As in hard times and a steeper climb to go. The beginning of one of my best poems. City of Woes. But even in the throes his playful side shows, he certainly keeps me on my mental toes, no matter how things stagnate or flow, providing a fleeting high or delivering low blows. He always shows me love. He doesn't handle anything or anyone with kid gloves, not even quote-unquote precious artwork. His life is totally berserk and certainly more intriguing and creatively feeding than any movie I've seen. He knows that life can be more bumpy and mean than a camel spitting right in your eye. He still doesn't submit to the ever-growing mountain of lies. Like flies are drawn to shit, there's little that hearts full of art and passion like his and mine can do to change it. But much like a favorite velvet painting, we can find new ways to frame it. This world is more wild than even a wild child can know, and it's so futile to spend your time trying to explain why some get stroked, some think it's a joke, and others get repeatedly hit. The preachers promise the answers from their pulpits, while the hardships grind so many like a poultice. My sweet friend, C.B., spoke without falsity, telling me, I came to L.A. looking for big waves and big tits. One of the best ways he ever signed off from a message to me was a simple statement containing advice that would actually stick. Have fun. That's it. Ooh. I've told y'all I'm having severe cell phone arm disorder. So I'm having to do everything I do. And I'm not even that bad of an addict. I don't even think I'm a crazy addict like these chitlins. But I've been having to do everything I do with voice to text. And there were so many mistakes in there. I'm glad that I knew what I was talking about. Because it was like, hoo, hallelujah, hullabaloo. My voice was not translating super well. But that went well. I got it all out. I use the word pleasantries too many times. Sometimes I'm like, I gotta rhyme. And then I'm like, oh shit, I used pleasantries like 3 times. But that's okay. And absurd, I think I used 3 times. But that's fine, because absurdity is the name of the game. Yeah, absurdity nails it quite nicely. So we'll just leave it. It's perfectly imperfect. It's art. It doesn't have to be... You don't have to smoke your farts to appreciate art. You can just appreciate it and know that it has flaws just like every other damn thing ever. I even picked this pin. Like, what pins am I going to wear to do this justice? Well, nobody's perfect. That one comes out a lot, and I'm certainly not. But he's helped me feel like I'm pretty cool. May not be perfect, but I'm pretty cool. And I worry about him all the time. I worry about you all the time, CB. All the time. You're on my mind often. Obviously, I wrote a 23-page poem about you, obviously with the help of many of your brilliant word weavings. Acting is believing. I believe in any of their flea shit. Touche. Completely. So that was my little homage. And he also often signs off in messages just sunshine. Say a bunch of crazy stuff, and I'll have to read it 15 times to try to follow it. But I can always depend on him saying sunshine as like a gift, an offering. So that's what I got for you, my darling friend. And I hope you're fending okay out there in the creepy realm of make pretend. I hope you appreciated this. My storage is low, so I gotta give you that slice of my heart and say sunshine.